friends, it is time for the next Maker Squad hop with Peacecraft Love. And this is the sketch that I am working with by Rochelle Spears and offered up by Anna from Peacecraft Love. I'm working with the Stamperia collection of Alice Through the Looking Glass and Alice in Wonderland. I did a little fussy cutting before I got going and collected some pictures of my daughter that we took through the years at Disneyland. She's 18 years old now, and we have taken pictures of her in front of that little pink door for years and years and years. I'm getting started with the Tim Holtz Distress Crackle Paint, and I'm going to put it on the mirror that I fussy cut out. The mirror, if you can't read it, says, "I can't go back to yesterday because I was a different person then," which I thought was a good quote that would just add something to the pictures of my daughter through the years. You know, the picture where she's the youngest, she's 3 years old, so there's 15 years of progress, and boy, has she changed and grown in those 15 years. And then I am going to let this dry while I get going on the rest of the production of this page. Thanks for coming along with me and checking out this scrapping page. I have not been a super duper scrapbooker for the last couple years. The first couple years of my daughter's life, I scrapbooked a lot, and then I got really into junk journals and have let the scrapbooking go, and often do scrapbooking via Shutterfly, because all you have to do is put pictures in a book and then print out the book. So this has been kind of a fun return for me to re-engage with this process. Don't worry, I'm gonna pull the camera back out so you can see better, but I'm just kind of prepping materials, getting the pictures ready to get glued on, rounding the corners with the We Are Memory Keepers cropper. And I'm gonna go ahead and do that to all the pictures and stick them on and just kind of like get things ready. I get my double-sided tape through Amazon, but pretty much everything else that you see that I'm working with today is available at Peacecraft Love, and you can use the code Tamara sent me 10 to get 10% off your entire order, which is pretty rad. And then if you spend $70, which isn't hard to do when you're buying art supplies, you get free shipping too. Here's the most tedious part of this whole project. So I have this die cutting machine, and I'm using it with the Spellbinders embossing folder that I got at Peacecraft Love. It's called Wonky Diamonds, and I thought that it just reminded me of the shrubberies in Alice in Wonderland, and it, like a maze or something of Alice in Wonderland. It just seemed appropriate, so I decided to use that. But my embossing machine, my die cutter, was just being super persnickety. I cannot wait to get the new one from Sizzix. I forget what it's called, but it's the big one, and it's not a cranker, it's an electric one. And that's why I bought this one, is because it was electric. I was tired of cranking when I was making big projects. But holy moly, it did not want to go through this machine. I had to take out all the shims, and then finally was able to get it through, and then fought with it some more afterwards because the entirety of the little piece of paper that I wanted to emboss wasn't embossed. So I just needed to do this little end and stick it through there, and it would not go. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm recording this just go through. But it kept like shooting out one side, or the top layer would like zip through and not the bottom layer. And oh my Lanta, it was just getting to be a lot. But eventually it did work out. My family we grew up as a Disney family. It was just so easy to go get a hotel, and then everything in Disneyland was right there. And so my kids grew up in a pretty privileged opportunity where we went to Disneyland at least once a year, sometimes 3 times a year, and it was just really fun. And at the time that the quarantine hit, we had season passes, so anytime that there would be a good airfare flight, we would just sit down for a weekend or whatever. And we had just happened to go to Disneyland, I want to say like a week before everything truly shut down, and we feel so grateful that we did that, because Disneyland has changed significantly since then, with the way that they're managing crowds, the way that they're charging, the food that they have, and the new CEO. And so we're just like, you know what? We had a great run while it was going, and thank goodness that we did. Because like all these little photo ops that we have evidence of, just exactly like the one I'm using. So anyway, it was a glorious thing for us as a young family, and now that we're getting older, I think we're gonna have to find something new. So now I'm just getting the back page ready to go and just inking up some edges here and gluing them down. And then what do you think I'm gonna do? Do you think I might stitch it? You might be right. I really wanted to include more red in this. I ended up using all of the red stuff when I was making my other projects. I shouldn't say all of the red, but most of the red. So I threaded up my machine with red thread to add some more red, and I was like, we'll see what this does. But you know what? It really did add a lot of extra to it, and I love the texture that stitching adds to any paper project. Not only does it make things stick down really well, but it also just makes it look really pretty. And so I did some zigzag stitches and then some wavy straight stitching just back and forth. And then I also stitched around the picture of Alice and my daughter together, both in their Alice dresses, and then stitched around the entire edge of the whole page so that I would have that binding on the edge. Not to sew anything down, it's just purely for prettiness. When I was a kid, whenever I'd stay home sick, I would watch Alice in Wonderland. My dad would illegally copy those great big huge, like the original discs that you had to flip over, laser discs I think they're called, and he would record them onto the VCR. And so it was one of the movies that we had, which interestingly enough, the movie Psycho was right after it. And so when I would stay home sick, I would always watch Alice in Wonderland followed by Psycho, which I think is kind of an interesting combo. But as a result, I could sing all of the songs from Alice in Wonderland, and it just became one of those movies that I really loved. And so I do have a Disney attachment to Alice in Wonderland. I have this rusty mesh, and I've had it for ever since my daughter was a baby, so for almost 20 years, and I never know how to use it. And I thought, aha, I can use it here, but it just ended up getting lost in the whole composition of everything, and every time I tried to add it in, it just didn't work out. So I guess it's still waiting for the perfect project. These little playing cards, I just need to corner the edges. I have two different croppers. The first one was a cheapie, or the second one was a cheapie one that I got on Amazon, but it does a smaller corner round, which worked better for these cards. And so I did that for the second batch. I tried one and then did the others. And then I'm just going to use that as a little embellishment right above the top door. But let's get to gluing some things down in just a minute. Oh, I'm going to lay everything out here and realize that everything that I put on there, I basically cover up all of that mesh. Furthermore, I was just feeling challenged with how to attach the mesh without having goop go everywhere. So it just eventually was, get rid of it. I don't need that. So anyway, just gluing the little cards together in just a minute, figuring out where to put them. And I thought I was going to put them right there and then ended up putting them elsewhere. I have some inner turmoil about scrapbooking. On one part, I really want to make it about the pictures. On another part, I like the artistic opportunity that is offered up. And so it's like this tricky balance of how much to do, how much is too much, how much is not enough. I sometimes go, why am I doing all this layering if I'm just going to cover everything up? But then I like the way the layering looks at the end, so that's why I keep doing it. And then like with the stitching, you just never know where it's going to be sticking out through there. And yeah, so it's just like this whole back and forth kind of thing where this is really just a play opportunity to see what happens and see what works out. There are no hard and fast rules for this challenge, we follow the sketch as close as possible, but because I work with the 6x8 size page, my pages have a little bit more of a limit of how many pictures I can include. I intentionally ordered a bunch of 4x4s just to accommodate the silly size that I'm working with. I had a book, a 6x8 book to put all this stuff in, and that's why I went with 6x8. When and if I do this again next year, I'm definitely working on a 12x12 just because it gives me a little bit more room to breathe. So this is eventually the layout that I'm going with. I love antiquing the edges. I antiqued over the embossing too, just to kind of like go with the paper appearance of the Stamperia collection. And once again, I got all the paper that I have here from Peacecraft Love. The blue, the gingham that I put the texture on, that's actually an Echo Park Easter gingham. It's like checks and gingham or something like that, dots and gingham. And it just goes so well with this collection though that I have used it in several projects. Running thread, rolling around that picture. I don't worry about perfectly straight lines. I just whipped around there a couple times. I'm also going to be adding some dimensional foam tape as we go on, just to kind of give it that little bit of depth and shadow so it pops out a little bit. And I've just been enjoying that a lot lately, and have been using the foam tape a lot more than usual. These guys are kind of like the background pieces, and then the Alice and Guinevere picture is going to be the one that's more popped out right there, just like that. I realized though that that page is just a touch too big, so after I put the foam tape on, I'm going to go through and trim all the sides, and then I have to re-corner all the edges, and then I have to re-ink all the edges. And so I'm just like, okay, instead of measuring twice and cutting once, I am doing it like the opposite, just making more work for myself, but that's okay. I think it turned out better with the edges just slightly smaller. A little DIY ephemera happening here. I'm just stacking these up so they look like they do when you hold them in your hand. And then I'm going to figure out where to put them. I don't like them there. And eventually I figure out where they're gonna go. I really went back and forth about covering up the blue texture because I liked that so much. The piece that came from the Spellbinders embossing folder. And I didn't want to cover that up. So I think they look really cute right here. And so I just added glue and made that their permanent home. So there's a little deck of cards popping out of Guinevere's side there as she's knocking on that door. She would literally walk up to that little door all the time when she was little, and she'd just be knocking and knocking and knocking and looking for that white rabbit because she knew that was the door to his house. And so she'd be like, hello, white rabbit. And it was just this adorable thing. And so it became a tradition that we just repeated over and over and over. Lots of fun in Disneyland. Her first time in Disneyland was when she was 16 months. And we just went to go along with some friends of ours who had just gotten married. And they said, come on our honeymoon with us. And we're like, okay. And we took her and we thought, oh, this is not going to be that engaging for her. But when we came back from Disneyland when she was so little like that, she came back with stories to tell. And so we saw this huge cognitive jump in her, and her language development just exploded because she had so many stories to tell. And so that's when we were like, oh, it's not a waste of money to take them before they're 5. If that's where you want to go, take them and have fun. And my husband and I really enjoyed Disneyland too. So it wasn't like it was a sacrifice for us. My husband's not the kind of person who likes to go sit on a beach. He'd go sit on a beach and worry about it. So, so Disneyland ended up being like the place for us because there was so little to worry about there. And now I'm just messing around trying to figure out the placement for everything. Like, do I want to put the mushroom up here, popping out of the top of that? Nope. And so I'm going to end up putting that on the bottom. But first I'm going to put some dimensional tape on Alice to get her ready to stick down. The Stamperia is actually really nice to fussy cut with because the image is printed on both sides beautifully. So when you start feeling like you know how you get to the part where you feel like you should turn the paper around? With Stamperia, you can do that because you can cut it from the front and the back. And so I love that about most of their fussy cut options in their paper collection. And when I'm laying down all of this, there's going to be a part that's already going to be up on top of the picture, which already has a layer of the foam tape behind it. So the bottom part needs to have a double layer of foam tape on it so that it can line up with the top part and not look like it's going down a waterfall. So it actually is completely flat once it sticks down. So if you're like, why is she putting more tape on top of the tape that already exists? That would be why. This is where I'm just putting those extra layers of foam tape on the back of Alice just to make sure that she's gonna fit on top of that picture okay. And making sure that I put the foam tape all the way down to her toes so that those aren't flopping around or bending down and looking weird. Super tedious doing this part because you have to cut everything so little. If you have overhang of the foam tape, it's going to collect dust and gunk and look disgusting. And so it's important that you are pretty meticulous about it. I mean, obviously not incredibly meticulous because I'm not obsessive, but just making sure that you stay pretty close to the paper. Peeling off and getting ready to stick her on, but oh my goodness, I realized I need to put my mushroom on. And I'm going to put the mushroom on, and it's going to start on the picture and go down onto the page, which I was kind of worried about, but I ended up being fine with it. It's like a background piece that you don't see too terribly much, and it looks fine. This is just a little washi tape mushroom sticker that I got a couple years ago when mushrooms were all the rage. Remember that? It was like everything was all mushroomy. Yeah, I bought into that. It was fun. And then I'm putting Alice right next to this mushroom, and I imagine that she just picked a little piece of the mushroom off and she's about to eat it. And then I have this little tag left over from a project I did earlier. It's just one of the Frankenstein tags, and it just adds a little extra piece on there. So I'll glue that on. And then I was looking for my E6000 and somebody in my house took it. So I'm stopping for a moment, and then I'm gonna run upstairs and blow dry the mirror with the crackle so that I can get that ready to go. And I'm digging out some more E6000. And then after that, it'll be time to stick everything on. I considered putting lace on the edge and then realized that that would just make it too busy. So now I'm back with this extra little piece here that is the quote, and it says, "I can't go back to yesterday because I was a different person then." When it dried a little wobbly, so I decided to go around the edges with the ink to kind of darken it up to make it look a little more consistent. And then after that, I'm gonna use some more of the foam tape to hopefully straighten it out just a little bit. And then I'm also putting a tiny bit of the antiquing stuff right onto the crackle so that it will rub into the crackle a little bit more and make the crackles stand out just a touch. So, adding foam tape, and then I'll be gluing the key on with the E6000, and the page is done. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching the process with me. It's been super fun to make these little scrap pages. It makes me look at my pictures that I have with brand new eyes. And it's also forcing me to go on a deep dive through all of the different pictures that I've taken through the years. And that's been really nice. My daughter is graduating this year from high school, and, starting that adulting gig that we're all doing and that we all start doing with, if we're lucky enough, we get to grow into adults and continue life. And she is one of those lucky ones. And, it's just been a beautiful experience to just kind of look back and see how far she's come, and have some little memories, and relive moments and all that stuff. And it's just been really nice. This one was fun, just to remember going to Disneyland before she had a brother, and when it was just the three of us, and we would go, and it was just this little princessy girl. She's always been super princessy. We tried to do the non-gendering thing, but as soon as she could pick colors and interests, it was like princess and pink, and we're like, okay, this is who we are. But it's fun to like kind of go back and revisit all of that, all those good times. So thanks again, and have a great day, and go check out all of the other makers who are linked below. Cheers to you, and have a beautiful day.